talking and not realizing, right? That's okay. We are live now, though. So, did you want to tell the story of your?
Oh no, that's good.
Should we just leave that alone for now?
Thank you so much for having me, Amico. I am so happy to be here.
Wait, I didn't say anything yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you go first.
All right, hold on. I need a sip of coffee in my Bryston mug.
Ooh.
Just so we're clear, the home entertainment show as a whole does not endorse certain products, but since Gary was kind enough to send this to me, Emico, I drink out of it. So Emico loves Bryston. I mean, who doesn't love Bryston? But anyway, you what?
I love Bryston.
I was going to say. So and we'll talk about that. So with that in mind, welcome to the talk, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. It is your Thursday afternoon weekly dose of all things hi-fi, all things music, all things systems design, and humanity. Where's the humanity these days? I am Emiko, your humble host, director of marketing for the show. And today we are very, very excited and delighted to have on Tim Schroeder, who is mostly known thus far as an amp designer to the stars, which is true. Oh, good. You nodded. You didn't get all sheepish and red this time. And master luthier. Tim has been on the pro audio side of music, but I wouldn't call it pro audio necessarily. I would call it on the design side, really, of it for a couple of decades, which is hard because he just turned 22 last week. And recently he took his love of amplifier design and hand making and all of that and guitar making luthierism, lutherification, luthery. Luthery? I don't know what the word is, but of the making of the guitars. And he moved over and added to his Schroeder amplification and added a wing of it called Schroeder Hi-Fi. And Schroeder Hi-Fi has all these really cool things. And for anybody who's tuning in and watching, you can see behind Tim, not to point or be rude, but there's all these great speakers. And I see some, I can't tell if that's an integrated preamp or an amp. He's just got a bunch of great components back there. And we're going to talk about all of that. So welcome, Tim. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I have to say that the first thing that I want to say is this. You have kind of burst onto the scene, which is really cool because I've worked with the show for a number of years. And I went from sort of the usual conversation and the usual suspects. And then all of a sudden it was Tim Schroeder, Tim Schroeder, Tim Schroeder, Tim Schroeder, Tim Schroeder. Do you know this guy out of Chicago? Tim Schroeder, Tim Schroeder, Tim Schroeder, Tim Schroeder. And I went, well, and so I was familiar with your amplifiers because my guitar player might be your number one fan and or possibly your number one stalker. That's his gray Volvo parked outside your driveway, I think. But I'll never say. But all of a sudden, everybody was talking about your showroom, what you have in there, how you're really effectively bridging the gap, not just by your knowledge, but by the things that you're presenting. You were presenting some cool stuff that once belonged to Jimi Hendrix. You're working with a number of record companies that are pressing vinyl, and you're sort of integrating all of these things into the hi-fi showroom. So I was hoping you could start by giving people a synopsis in case they're still living under a rock. At least they're living at home, which is the same thing these days. And just maybe tell folks sort of how you got started a little bit. And I know you were an audiophile first and then sort of got into the whole guitar making luthier thing. But if you could tell a little bit of that story before we start pelting you with questions.
Well, the way I see it, people say, well, you got into the hi-fi market from what I was doing, which was making, audiophile quality amplifiers. I say that. Right. Most people in the pro market really don't understand what audiophile quality actually means.
And to be clear, we should say that your amplifiers are for like musicians.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. They're not power amps for systems. They're actually like guitar amps and things like that. Right.
So,
just to delineate. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, my amplifiers are typically for musical instrument amplification, guitars, basses, keyboards, et cetera, et cetera. I don't necessarily strip out frequencies that don't belong, which is the easy way to design an amplifier. If you're making a guitar amp per se, you usually use smaller coupling caps, that kind of thing, to kind of filter out any frequencies that aren't used in the guitar bandwidth. Which makes it easy for a designer because they don't have issues with noise and all sorts of oscillation and kinds of things like that. However, you lose the magic. People know that most of the people probably watching this show know that there's things outside of what we can physically hear that add to the music. Being upper frequencies, lower frequencies that we can feel, perhaps maybe not hear.
Right.
That add to the sense of air, that kind of thing. So my guitar amplifiers do that, and they are different than what is out there in the industry now. So, and I've been doing that for about 20 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my general interest began when I was a kid. Probably my house always had lots and lots of music in it. I always had access to classical music, to musicians, actually, because my mom worked for the Old Town School of Folk Music, which is now kind of it's a big deal in the city of Chicago, certainly at this point. But back in the 70s, it was not. It was just a 3-room place out of a schoolhouse, a converted schoolhouse in Evanston. And I was the 6-year-old kid who was given actual silver dollars to run around the parking lot and put flyers of the Old Town School of Folk Music underneath the windshield wipers of cars. So, and from that, I was exposed to live music constantly, musicians, guitars, musical instruments, of all sorts of things. My mom always dragged me to hear folk music, and my dad to the opera or classical music, the symphony, etc. So I was always exposed to all of that kind of stuff, and I always had musical instruments around house, as well as some rudimentary kind of reel-to-reel tape machines, that kind of thing, and the cassette machines, of course, that were around the house. So I had access and exposure to all of these things at a very young age. And it just kind of blossomed from there. In high school, I was very, very fortunate to not only have all these things around, but my love of music was really cemented when I started hearing different players, like people like Leo Kottke, different vintage recordings from the CSO, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, with like Reiner and all these famous recordings at this point. And was introduced. I was bought a Tascam Porta 05 multi-track recorder, cassette recorder, which in retrospect had a noisy pinch roller and went wah, 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 and I could not figure out how to get that to stop. But anyway, all of my recordings from that time have this wah, 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 wah.
Your signature sound, man. That's
I created a digital platform to recreate that sound.
Yes.
It's a pedal. Spoiler alert. We want that Schroeder sound. So I was exposed to all these things. I was very, very fortunate to have a place which is famous in the Chicagoland area, Audio Consultants. They've been around since like 1968. They just closed their doors last December 20th, I believe it was. But I grew up going there, and they were extremely kind to me. I became very good friends with the owners and the employees, etc. And kind of had free reign even as a teenager to borrow things and to which is mind blowing and a tremendous education for a 15-year-old kid who all of a sudden was given things like Haflers and the thing that the component that first really made me say, there's something completely different, which was a threshold FET 9 preamp that just completely blew my mind when that was lent to me. So I had exposure to all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was also picking up music. I was recording on my Tascam. You know, and I even to this day, I kind of see myself more as a kind of a Brian Eno kind of a person. I mean, I've got a fair amount of chops, etc. But I'm in love with sound, you know, and not just music. I love sound, you know, and my earliest recordings were kind of sound collages, if you will, similar to Eno, you know, and he was a big influence of mine.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I came up with all of this stuff together, you know, working on my own vintage gear, my own guitars, recording myself, listening to tons of music, having access to all these wonderful things. And so, you know, that is who I am, from the ground up, you know, and so when people these days say, hey, you know, you're coming from the pro audio field and you've had this, you know, expertise in this field, it's a real stretch for you to go into hi-fi. It's not.
Right.
This has been my passion all along.
Well, I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't really recognize is that there really isn't that big of a gap. There's not this cavernous divide between the two. There are more similarities than there are differences. And I think it's important that the industry, the hi-fi industry, recognizes that a lot of the folks that are coming in now to work in it, which I like to call the new generation, tend to have that pro audio background. And they tend to have that either as a music creator or working in studios or in production, right? Or engineering or mix or mastering or whatever. And so it's all coming full circle.
Sure.
You know,
I, as somebody who is in many different facets on a certain level in the music, you know, recording, listen, playback, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know, everybody seems to be compartmentalized. You have the recording engineers who have very specific thoughts and their you know, their Bible, if you will. And they're not open to other things. Musicians have their beliefs. They're not open to other things. You know, audiophiles have their beliefs and they're not open to things. And, you know, if everybody just listened to one another, there's validity in what everybody has to say.
Yeah.
And it's all art, it's all music, it's all perception, and it all makes a difference. And it all,
well, and we're all sitting at the same table.
Yeah.
As an engineer and as a producer, you have to bring to life the vision that the artist has that's playing it, that gets mixed, that then gets hopefully purchased by the audiophile that takes it home to listen to it on their side. I mean, we're all sitting at the same table. We may be in different seats, but we're all eating the same meal here, you know, in that sense. Jason W. has a question for you, which I promised that we would pose him. He says, I see that you sell benchmark products which are known for their objective data. How do you design your instrument amps? Is it more towards the objective side or the subjective side? Thanks.
That's a good question. Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's impossible to make a musical instrument that is completely objective or subjective. You know, it has to have its own voice. You know, the kind of line that I try to you know, walk down the middle of is I want it to be hi-fi and transparent enough and fast enough and out of its own way enough so that when your right hand or left hand or slide tells it to do something, your heart tells it to do something, that it comes out the other end unimpeded. That said, I do have controls in my amplifiers. You know, like, you know, typical audiophile components do not have controls because they think that, you know, a pure signal is coming in and a pure signal is going out the back end, you know. But you need to alter those things as a player, certainly. So, and that's the creative license, you know, is to be able to alter your tone.
Absolutely.
But again, you know, the amplifier has to get. You shouldn't be playing to the amplifier. The amplifier should be doing whatever you want it to do. If that's a simplistic way of saying it, I guess. But yeah, thank you. That's a great question.
Lenny has jumped in and said it's an equal measure of art and science. I think that's a very eloquent and digestible way of putting it.
Agreed.
I think. And I know we hosted you on a different, gosh, it just seems like yesterday we were talking about this.
Yeah.
We hosted you on a different podcast that I co-host called The Gear You Hear. And we talked about how on that one, we were talking about your instrument amplification as the focus of our topics. And I know we were talking about how your background in that certainly affects the way that you approach your relationships with your clients when it comes to either selling them components for a system or introducing them to something in a different way. Can you take us through that approach a little bit?
Yeah. So, I'm coming from a place where I've built instruments and rigs for musicians.
Right.
I've sat down with them and helped them to develop a sound, a tone of their own. And I have been in the recording studio while they're recording. I've been in the mastering lab next to, Bob Ludwig while it's being mastered. And now I am selling the components to listen to that. So it's kind of a unique perspective, I believe. And when it comes down to it, though, tone is so subjective, I don't know if I'm getting off topic here, but, I keep remembering back to, Mark Levinson's cello product, which I believe were some of the finest products ever to grace the face of the earth. I mean, I had the great fortune to spend time around some full cello systems. And actually back in the day when I was making archtop guitars, was actually speaking with Mark about doing some bartering to have one of my archtops in his New York store in exchange for some gear. But
nice.
What I liked about what he had was that it was neutral, but the cello palette, of course, was essentially like a mastering suite.
Yeah.
And you could alter the tone, but do it properly, and I love that. I think I'm off topic, but
that's okay. That's okay. No, the idea is like, how do you get your, how does this play into the way that you would support a client's journey if they were to walk into your showroom and say, hey, I want to augment my system, or I want to just buy a brand new system?
Sure.
Right.
Well, for 30 years, I've been doing custom work with musicians. So, when people come in, I'm still a custom designer, essentially. So when people come in, I don't try to imprint what I have for sale, or, I don't have a massive inventory of things. I only carry things that I believe in, of people. The company owners are usually friends of mine. They're good people. They're friendly. They love music. It's all about music. It's not about crunching numbers and et cetera. So when people come in, I don't have this thing in the back of my mind, hey, I got to move this rack of X.
Right.
People come in, I listen to them. I want them to be happy. It makes me happy to see others happy, because that's what I've been doing for 30 years. And that's why I have the client base that I have that are dedicated to me, because I am to them. I will never BS people. I say what I feel, to an extent, but if somebody has trust in me, I will give them the world, so when they come in, I try to listen to them. Of course, there's, everybody needs to, talk about budget, et cetera, to begin with, to kind of get you into, an area of the sweet spot where we start talking about components, et cetera. But, I just see it as another custom job for a musician. I am trying to find out what they want, the sound that's in their head,
right?
And whatever. And if they have components, I find out what they have, what they do, and they don't like about them. I listen, what types of music they listen to. I'll play, radically different things in my shop for them to see, what kind of area they're, do they like something that's, crystalline? Do they like something that's warm and fuzzy? And, just like, your older sister's hi-fi that you fell in love with music on, which just happens to be one of my favorite hi-fis still. So it's really just kind of trying to figure out what they want and emphasizing and helping them along, all with staying within a budget, of course, and
right.
Yeah, hopefully.
So terrible segue, but speaking of budget and speaking of giving the people what they want, Jason W has another. He's full of good questions. He actually says, has Tim ever thought about offering a DIY guitar amps that model is commercial offerings? That models commercial offerings, I think is what he's saying. Jason, if you want to clarify that, but I think we got.
Like, have I ever thought about making a modeling amplifier? Is that the question?
I'm not sure. He says, has Tim ever thought about offering DIY guitar amps? That model commercial offering? He says model is, but I think he meant that model commercial offerings.
Okay.
We'll wait for him to type in.
I have thought about it. I have thought about making DIY versions of my amplifiers. That said, though, my hesitation is that every single amplifier, everything with a Schroeder name on it, is made by me, period. There is not another person that touches them. So I am very proud of that. And that's, I could have, my business could have grown exponentially many times over, though that's my passion. I want to be the hand that guides the solder on every single connection. Right. It's literally a labor of love. And that's where I'm at with that, Yeah. So I have not moved forward to make a DIY version of a Schroeder amp.
But you have thought about it.
I've thought about it. I've thought about a lot of things.
Yeah, your project board is long, I'm sure.
If his question is, have I thought about making?
He clarified. He said, has Tim ever thought about offering the DIY guitar amps that model his commercial offerings? So meaning your amps, right?
Yep, I think
you answered the question. Yeah. And now he says, bummer. You had a customer there. But no, I mean that's a good question, because I think like right now in Hifi, the build your own speakers and the build your own subs and all of these things are very much in vogue, as it were. But I wanna ask you, this is a question we didn't get to ask you on the other podcast, but that's okay, because I think it's very important here, because you talked about it earlier. Why do you think hi-fi is important?
Well, same reason I feel fine art is important.
Okay, which is?
I'll get to that. Thank you for that. So as an engineer and as somebody who makes things, I believe that audiophile components, easy for me to say, is an art form. And I enjoy using tubes and all of these kinds of romantic. Of course they have their reasons, but the romantic aspects to the craft. Vinyl is certainly a romantic thing. That's certainly an art form, no question. So and that is what's attractive to me as an artist about kind of audiophile components. It also just so happens that I love music, and when I listen to music on a cultivated audiophile system, I feel closer to that music. And as if I'm, I can still enjoy it on a hand-me-down boombox in the other room. If I'm familiar with the sound, it still kind of brings me back to a place, all those kind of familiar feelings. But I can listen to that song that I've heard 1,000 times in that boombox and come in and sit down with these Eggleston Works Vigintis, for example, and I hear things that I've never heard before, and it makes it very, very intimate for me. There's a song that I've heard. To be honest, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I've heard it thousands of times, literally thousands of times. And there was always one part of it that there was this very, very faint distortion. It was driving me nuts, because as somebody who has spent 30 years listening for distortion, I'm really tuned into that stuff. So, and it was this little, and it always sounded like a blown tweeter or something that was on the edge. And it always drove me crazy. After I got these Eggleston Works Vigintis, and this system cultivated behind me, I played that piece of music, and what sounded like one tone, I could clearly hear was two instruments that were playing in unison, and one of those instruments had some spit in the valve. And I hear the reed kind of going, like this little kazoo thing, and I could hear it clearly,
Right.
and it answered that question, which was a relief. But not that I want to hear spit, but
Right.
but it makes it very, very intimate for me, and that's the important thing. I can be teleported to another place, and that's one reason why I like vinyl for certain things too. I mean, I like period things on the format that they were created for.
Right.
Modern music, I could take or leave on vinyl, but period music that was done all on analog equipment all the way through, that had that aesthetic, that tonal aesthetic all the way through from the beginning. It's moving. It's like a snapshot in history, and it takes me to a different place.
Right.
So.
Do you feel that there is, and we pose this question to a lot of our guests, but in your case, I'm very curious because you've got this extra layer of being an amp designer and maker as well. Do you feel like there's a right way and a wrong way to listen to music?
No.
Okay. Why? Now I'll ask, and why is that?
I mean, it's such an individual thing. I mean, any well, I'll say from an amp maker for musicians. So I make very, very clean amplifiers. I also make distorted circuits as well. But I had an amplifier in here one time. It was a solid state amplifier. Half of it was just completely fried out, and it was supposed to be very loud, and instead it just made like the most distorted, like kind of sound.
Goodness.
But it rode the note, and it was trash. But I knew there was one musician of note who plays with this kind of stuff, that this would absolutely be the finest thing for what he is doing. And he came in, I gifted it to him, and he was over the moon because he had this crazy thing that nobody else had, that made this horrific sound that he just happened to be able to use to make music, So there's no such thing as the right tool for the job, the right tool for the job is the right tool, I should say,
So let me pose the question in a different way.
Okay.
Meaning, let me sort of direct it.
Please.
When one is listening, there's no wrong or right way to listen to music. I agree. But when one is listening objectively, or when one is listening for the purpose, for a purpose, right? Meaning other than enjoyment, whether it's tuning speakers or balance, or you're trying to figure out what's up with your room or whatever it may be, are there specific methods or specific things that you recommend to your clients that they listen out for?
Yes, though I've never been asked to put that into words. So,
okay.
The first thing I will say is that I always like having people go home with their components so they spend time with them, and see how they feel about it. I notice that a lot of audiophiles get very, very, very hung up on what is proper, what's right and what isn't right. Wrong, we'll call it. And they get very hung up on that. And here they are, they're buying a $30,000 preamp, and they're so obsessed and worked up and upset about what's going on. Is this right? Am I hearing this? And they're asking me over and over again, like, what do I do? And as somebody who is selling this stuff, but as a human who cares about other people, I'll tell people, maybe it's time to give it a rest. This buying a $30,000 preamp, if you have the funds,
Sure.
should be an incredibly enjoyable process.
Yeah.
You should be over the moon that you're in this position, that you can experiment with this kind of stuff, and be exposed to this kind of stuff and share it with your friends and family and everything else. I mean,
right.
If it's bothering you, you need to take a step back and reevaluate. Just take a breather. But you just to listen, with open ears. I mean, that's something that you have to learn as a recording engineer, of course.
Sure.
You have to, because our ears instantly want to focus on what's in our mind with what our mind is focusing on. We need to open our minds, baby, and like just kind of like let it flow. So,
right.
So how does one do that? I always, I start by listening for noise first and foremost. I listen for things that hurt me, meaning, there's often frequencies that are very peaky or something like that become fatiguing. If something is fatiguing, it's gone, period. Because you cannot do that to yourself. If you're forcing yourself to sit into a chair for 2 hours to listen to music, and you're white knuckling it on the way out, that's not good.
Sounds terrible,
doesn't it? But I've been there. I've absolutely been there. So, it has to feel good in order, first off, and people need to pay attention to that. Right. And people tend to intellectualize the sound, and to intellectualize, especially in audiophile stuff.
Yeah.
So, but just all the standard stuff. I mean, listen for clarity, listen for bass, listen for nodes. Are you getting detail? Is that detail seem etched? I also tell people to try to put themselves in a live performance place, right? Especially like a symphony orchestra or something like that. You go and listen to that, and it's smooth as silk. I mean, it's very warm, it's smooth. But and people kind of forget that because they're looking for, because they're buying a detailed system, they're looking for detail.
Yes.
Instead of musicality, which first and foremost. So,
right.
Just listen, feel, and listen with your heart too. That's important. I hate to get kind of, esoteric here, but
that's a totally different song than the song that Roxette wrote.
Yeah.
If they had written "Listen with Your Heart," that would be very different.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
I think so. Maybe it would have done better. I don't know.
Yeah, but you need to listen with your heart.
So why do you think that? And I love that you put it in quotes, audiophiles, are so hung up on the measurements and the tech specs and is it proper? Is it right? Why do you think that is? And do you think that most of them actually know what they're taking in when they're reading something, when they're reading a spec sheet?
Sure. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of very, very bright people out there who can understand much more than I about the things that I'm even doing. That said, can they do it better than me? No, but I'm kidding. But I don't know why people get hung up on it. I think, and here's one of those things where you're talking audiophiles. Put this so you can see my hands. Audiophiles, and you have recording engineers, right?
Yeah.
And audiophiles are saying, "Hey, this power cable makes this sound proper, in, out, etc." Musicians and mix engineers are saying that's absurd because there's absolutely no such thing as as a pure signal. It's going through thousands and thousands of components and flip-flops and phase correlations and etc. Regardless of your power cable coming out the other end, you could probably use a tone control on your thing. So for your $4,000 power cable, which there's definitely a place for them, mind you, but you can also a mix engineer will go blip, on one knob. Oh,
Right.
completely different. It's just
Right.
the job of that $4,000 power cable. Which I think is
Which brings me to another question. But
Uh-oh. Did I answer that appropriately? Does that?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. This is all I think we're all getting to know in the 2 times that I've gotten to interview you and the 2 that I watched. This is all a journey.
Okay. Right.
It is very much Alice through the looking glass.
Sure.
But you happen to have an artist who I may or may not mention, but he is a very happy evangelist of your amplifiers. But I happen to know that he uses I believe it's a power cord of a very well respected high-end audio cable design company.
Yes.
Audience, right? So the guitarist I'm talking about.
Yep,
it's our good friend Jake.
Yep.
And the way that he talks about it and how he pairs the 2 together, and he talks about how symbiotic that is and seamless, and he can get any tone he wants and this, that, and the other. Why do you feel that pairing is so good? I'm just singling those 2 out because he's said it over and over and over again. So it's a good example to use.
That is no accident that he feels that way. So I am an audience dealer.
Right.
And I also use audience components in my amplifiers. I use some of their wire. I use their cryogenics lab facilities. I use some other things as well. So amongst other things, of course. But I'm a big fan of audience products. So the first time I was using an audience power cord, I was going to do a recording. So we're talking about Jake Sinniger from the band Humphreys McGee.
Yes.
In case people don't know, so who is a phenomenal player, an incredibly good human being, an absolute sweetheart, honest. Just I can't say enough about him. And he's also a good friend. And so I was going up to his studio when I just started kind of doing some work with audience, and became friends with Lenny audience, and was starting to implement some of their internal components in my amplifiers. And so they sent me a power cord just to check out. And I'm certainly no stranger to high-end power cords. Or cables of any sort. I've been selling Cardis for years, and Kimber and Audience, and straight wire, all sorts of people. So I'm well aware, and and even just I listen to power cords for all of my products, whether it's the $20 power cord that I give away. I listen to a slew of them before I say, hey, this is a good mate to my amplifier. It doesn't need to be an expensive power cord. They all sound different. Period. So anyway, I was getting ready to go to a video shoot at Jake Sinniger's studio up in Michigan. I'm in Chicago, and I was putting together an amplifier that I was way behind on, and I was bringing up. I just happened to have begged, borrowed, and stolen. About half a dozen of my products. It's very unusual for me to have all of my products in one place. It was the perfect storm. He had some downtime, so I'm literally engineering on the fly in my head until 2 o'clock the morning before running out to his place. And I still just had tape written across the front. I mean, I didn't even know if the thing was going to work. I turned it on. I turned it on at like 2 a.m. just to see if it was going to work. It powered up. I was like, great, this is close enough. I got to get some sleep. Went home, went back the next day, loaded up the truck, went to grabbed, whatever stuff I could on the way out. I grabbed the audience power cable, which I had not really become that familiar with on the way out the door because I was short of power cable. So get there, we plug in this amplifier, and which we have video of it somewhere. Plug in this amplifier, and it is both to my ears and to his ears one of the absolute finest sounds we've ever heard. In fact, I have him on tape saying this might be the best amplifier I've ever heard. We do this whole video set. I go home. I grab the amp, throw it on my bench again because I want to test it now that it's, had a little time to be burned in, etc. I plugged it up with my, generic bench cord, and the magic was gone. And I thought, okay, what's going on? So, and I backtrack. I thought, holy boop boop, maybe it's the power cord.
Right.
And I plugged that power cord in, and it was all there.
So which power cord was it? Which audience power cord?
The audience MP. Yeah.
Just so that we know, I'm sure somebody's going on to audience-av.com right now and looking it up.
I'd be able to, I forget the name off the top of my head, but gotcha. I think it was the MPSE perhaps. So, but anyway, so that power cord was positively magical with that head. And that said, that power cord does not sound magical with everything.
Right.
Sometimes a cheap power cord will sound better with a certain amp, or sometimes a more expensive one will. I've paired $3,000 power cords with $2,000 amplifiers because it's the mix that works.
Right.
And if it works, it works. So yeah.
That's a great story. And I love that story also because Audience is known for being super high-end audio, not just hi-fi, but high-end audio. And so to take that over to a guitar amplifier and to have that reaction, I think it's very cyclical and reciprocal in that sense of like, well, now he's going to go and play the music that's going to get recorded, that's going to get listened to on the system, that's probably going to be powered by the same power cord or something similar, right? So it's very interesting to watch the entire journey come around like that.
Yep.
Celine has a question for you. Yep. And then I want to go back to the power chord thing, but I do want to, this is a good question. She'd like to know what kind of music is good to test out sound systems.
Music you like, music you're familiar with. I don't think there's any one type of music necessarily. I mean, I have my personal listening preferences are pretty broad. So, I'll usually have like a classical recording that has some breadth and space to it. Maybe some, Rage Against the Machine or something like that just really kind of kicks you in the chest when you listen to it.
Right.
Maybe some jazz, actual jazz, but that's personal preference, not smooth jazz. But
hey.
I guess.
I love smooth jazz. I mean, I like actual jazz too.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say just a broad smattering of what you listen to on a regular basis, for sure.
And is the reason, I guess the next question that I would ask you is, and why is that? Why is it important to use songs that you know to test out the systems?
Well, because you know the difference. Presumably, if it's a favorite song, you've listened to it on many different systems, and you would be able to much more easily recognize, whether something that the bass sounded strange or the timing was off, or it had some life to it. And again, listen with your heart. If it's your favorite song, you probably love it, and if it means more to you listening on one system versus the other, then that's probably the right one, regardless of what the measurements say.
Fair enough. So, Celine, we hope that answers your question. So power chords. So the great cable debate rages on, and I have to ask. I do, because it just, was it last week that we were on the other show, and I said that I like to troll the audiophile boards at night and see what these dudes are posting up.
Yep.
And it's true, and I found so many more comments and questions from people. And so I am curious, because we talked about it on that side of things, but I'd like to talk about it here in terms of hi-fi. Like, what are your thoughts? And to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, in no way, shape, or form are we admonishing or endorsing anything. We're just speaking about opinions here before somebody comes and tries to stab me in the parking lot for saying, you think cables make a difference?
Yep.
No, you're wrong. But I am curious.
All just music, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's right.
All good fun.
But I am curious to know what your experience has been in terms of, because I know you do have different systems that you set up for different clients and things. And so if you swap out cables with your components, do you find that makes a difference? And what has that experience been like for you?
Of course, it definitely makes a difference. To
the naysayers.
To that debate that is raging in across America's fine wasteland, whatever.
Well, we don't talk politics or religion here, so we got to talk cables. Yeah. That's the thing.
So I do not care to be embroiled in such debates.
Yeah.
So that said, when people come in, I don't want to necessarily talk religion with them. So right. I will say, hey, hold on a second, take a power cord, swap it, and if they look at me like, what the heck are you doing? I just say, oh, sorry, I just wanted to do something, and if they're like, holy moly, what the heck would, and then we can kind of get into that conversation, but with, I mean, really,
if they're cool or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with certainly with my guitar amps and that kind of stuff, I mean, they have pretty significant power supplies as to where I can literally hot swap it and without losing the tone. So it's kind of like an on-off switch,
Right.
And 90 odd plus percent of the people can hear it. Actually, I think only one person couldn't hear the difference. And interestingly enough, I think pretty highly of my amplifiers, of course. And this fellow was playing, and I was listening, and I was like, how can he make my amplifier sound this bad? It was like the worst sound I'd ever heard in my entire life.
Oh my goodness.
And his name was
right. Here's his website, everybody. Go troll him. No.
He lives at. But he could not hear it. But I don't know why I even threw that out. It was just kind of a personal
therapy. It's all therapy, Tim.
I had to get that out. Thank you for listening, guys. I feel much better.
So, but you do feel that cables make a difference.
No question. Yeah, no question. So,
and do you
don't agree with me, I won't, waste time doing that. I've got better things to do with my time and my limited brain capacity, So
no, fair enough. Fair enough. It's just because we had Lenny Mayu on last week from MoFi, who has obviously spent significant time with audience, and as you know, and he has a very particular way of explaining how cables make a difference, which I love because it's not a subjective opinion. It's a performance-based thing, and he goes through this whole thing about gas in your car, and are you putting in high octane or unleaded or regular, or are you just throwing olive oil in there and crushing up a potato and then letting it go, right? And so I just think it's interesting because I like to get everybody's opinion on this and everybody's perspective, because by and large, most of the folks that we've interviewed have said that the cables make a difference for them and for their clientele. It's just interesting that then I'm up at 2 a.m. scrolling. And I'm thinking, I know some of you people, these are some of your dealers, and you're telling me that you couldn't hear that, but you probably walked into their showroom, sat down, went, wow, that sounds amazing. And then walked in and goes, I don't know. I have no clue. So it's always interesting to hear why it's important as well, and what to look for.
And as a dealer, if you don't believe in something, you should not be selling it.
Yeah.
And again, this is my art form. This is very true to my heart. And I don't BS people. I tell people what I think, and I expect the same from them.
Right.
And that's why I deal with companies that I like the people. I like their politics, so to speak.
Sure.
I like the way they do business. And when these high-end manufacturers come in and we sit down and they bring me things to peruse, different pieces of gear, etc. Like we sit down and like we say, yeah, it sounds good, and then we talk about music for like 8 hours.
Right.
And I've done that with Gary Dayton from Bryston, and others. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it's all about. Period.
Right.
Yeah,
it's interesting. That's the thing that I've found as well, is like when you sit down with the actual horse's head, as it were, they don't actually talk about the things that you think that they're going to talk about. They just talk about, hey man, have you heard the so-and-so record? Or did you hear the remaster of this? Or so-and-so did a virtual concert whatever. You never hear them
Yeah.
talk tech.
Yeah.
Like, surprisingly, actually.
And, to measurements and that kind of stuff. And there's definitely a tipping point to having something so flat that it's just not engaging,
Right.
And I've noticed that with, speaker companies over the decades, they got to a point where everything was ruler flat and everybody's like, and like they couldn't do it for 3 hours. And, people have started to, figure out how to, now that we've achieved this, this technology where we can get this level of flat, if you will.
Right.
Now we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get some of the art back into it? How do we get some of the sweetness back into it and have it be flat but engaging? And again, it's all art after all.
We have that. I don't know if you had this experience, but I had this experience when everything in pro audio started moving over to digital, and I mean like Pro Tools. I don't mean like ADAT. Yeah. Which was dead before it hit the driveway. But like, I remember getting I'd say records, but they're digital recordings sent to me saying, hey, check this out. This is going to go out. And I would sit there and I would listen. And I had a nice system. I mean, I had a nice pair of tannoys at the time that were just lovely, and they're now vintage. But I remember I called up a producer friend of mine and I said, yo, man, where are all the peaks and valleys? Like, where are the volume rides? Like, and he goes, oh no, we don't do that anymore. It's compression. And I was like, what? That sounds and I remember I said to him, I said, Stu, that sounds painful. Yeah. Being compressed. Like, you're literally being compressed. And he goes, yeah. But we do that so that we can max out the headroom on. And I was like, well, I've stopped listening. I can't deal. And then when they started coming in with these analog plugins, you can make it sound like tape. And I was like, well, why don't you just do it? And so it's interesting that the hi-fi industry has gone into that place of flat. We're not flat as people. Yeah. The instruments aren't flat. The music that pushes air pushes it multidimensionally. It's not flat.
The way we hear is not flat.
Right. Yeah. So it's very interesting that became the thing that people would hang their hats on. And now that we've gotten there, like, great, we've done it. Now let's undo it. Yeah. It was actually not broken before. So.
Yeah. And to one of our earlier, one of the earlier questions that was posed to me, I found the tipping point in my guitar amplifiers where I found like way too flat and transparent. Electric guitars don't really sound that good. It's a flat plank of wood. Believe me, it's got tone. I don't want to get into that. I'm a guitar maker. I get it, right. But you need something to put a little sparkle in there,
Yeah. Right.
So, I've certainly found the tipping point where I was just like, yeah, this thing has no life whatsoever, and that was because I used the highest of the highest of the highest of the highest end components, you got to get color in there somewhere.
Right.
And that's where, I consider myself an electron sculptor. I've used that phrase before. And, a chef will use different ingredients to make they don't need the exact same ingredients every time. They can go into the kitchen and say, I've got some of these. This works well with this. This will bring out the flavor of that, etc. And that's kind of what I do. It is an art form, period. And I have enough engineering chops to know where my parameters lie. And, it's the artist in me that works within those parameters to make something that is involving.
Right. Question. In the hi-fi industry, in the hi-fi community, I'll speak about North America. I won't speak about Europe and Asia because that's not really, well, at the moment, unfortunately, we're all grounded, as it were. Well, we're grounded anyway. Have you found in hi-fi that there are cliques amongst the dealer manufacturer relationships? And I don't mean that in a political way. What I'm getting at is actually not something that's backstabby or, or anything like that, or gossipy, but it's actually about having your people, your enclave, your community, your comfort, right? And what have you seen that's different for different sort of clusters of folks in terms of that?
In terms of specific brands, or what are?
Well, like for example, I notice that there's like the budget folks,
Sure.
there's the super high end folks that are really nice and inclusive. Then there's the super high end folks that are exclusive and kind of mean to people that don't have the money.
For sure.
But then there are people that love the music and all they care about is the music, and they sell hi-fi, but here's the music. Then there are like the tech folks, right? It's kind of like a high school lunchroom. In that, well, no, and you have to sort of figure out who you want to eat lunch with at the beginning of the year, because that's your junior year set, right? So I'm just curious, when you entered into the hi-fi community, what was your experience in terms of finding your feet, and how did that all play out to where it is now?
Well, I think when first off, I've been in it for a long time, dabbling. So it's not like I was just kind of thrown in the deep end.
Right. Yeah.
And I've done design work in the field as well. So, but I think I just kind of started by what things do I love?
Mm-hmm.
What products do I love? What fits the bill? I was very fortunate to know a couple of people in the industry who became very good friends with, doors had opened just because I was kind of a normal person, a music lover, had the background that I did, and people were willing to talk, and we're kind of like-minded type people,
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed very easy for me to kind of move into this, and which is why that I deal with only manufacturers that I really, really enjoy as people, and as well as their products. There are definitely, exclusive, brands and that kind of thing. And that's part of the, I think, attraction, is that exclusivity, for certain people,
Right.
just in, a lot of those people, might be posers for, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, but
right.
Anybody who's attracted to something because it's exclusive and expensive is, whatever, not really my kind of person. But there's certainly that. I agreed to what you had to say about the school lunchroom. You got these little camps, I've got,
it's true though.
Definitely, I've got the DIY guys coming in, who are like the fellow who, I forget his name at the beginning.
Oh, Jason W. With the good questions. Yeah.
Yep. So, I've got the DIY guys, I've got tube guys, everybody kind of has their thing, and I embrace it all, as long as it's for the right reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
But I come into it with an open mind and try not to be cliquey or whatever. It's just it's for me, it's more about personalities and just love of music. Again, I keep ramming that point home, but that's what it is.
Yeah,
that's all I've got.
For sure. So let's talk about, in the last few minutes that we have, let's talk about what you've got in Schroeder Hi-Fi right now that people can. I know that with the current pandemic situation, social distancing, you're running a very responsible business, and I know that you are available by appointment.
Correct.
Unless something changed in your area where you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I would be curious. I know a couple things got sold, but a couple things came in. So can you tell us what's in there now? Yeah.
So I consider myself more of an audio concierge service than a dealer, if you will, because I rep a lot of different brands. I do a lot of different things, and I don't like to fill the shelves for both for financial reasons, but also for just because I don't want to be locked into any one thing.
Yeah.
So I try to keep things on hand that represent a certain level of a certain type of product. So right now behind me you can see I've got a pair of Bryston Model Ts, which are the big speakers over there. It's hard to point in a camera, but over there, Bryston Model Ts, which represent a certain thing. I've got like Linton's hanging around here somewhere. I've got obviously the Vigintis behind me, the Eggleston Vigintis. all of which, that's three very distinct areas that are represented there, and again, coming from my background of working as a customizer and making custom things, people come in, we have the conversation, we get into a certain area, again, if there's that basis of trust, I will get things, process. It's not a hey, come on in for the afternoon and sit down, and we'll got some things we have to blow out, and we'll make a system for you. I mean, it's like, let's develop a relationship so that we can do it properly, and you will end up being thrilled, period. Otherwise, you won't buy anything from me, and that's just the way it is. So so I've got I do things like Bryston, of course. I've got like I represent BAT, so I've got a BAT Rex 3 coming in, which is like mind blowing. I just had a 53 in here. I just sold a pair of amps as well of theirs. So BAT's been super cool and really, really interesting, and it's certainly a niche, and they do really, really well. I'm a huge fan, obviously, of Eggleston Works. I've been a big fan of them for since the original Andrews came out, and sitting in Bob Ludwig's hot seat and listening to surround sound Egglestons, like the Ivies and stuff, was like
mind blowing.
It was like gene altering. I mean, I don't mean like my genes, or like my genomes.
Right.
I was a different person.
Right.
After leaving that. So that was mind blowing. So, and I do have some some very cool budget things, like, well, budget in quotes, depending on what your budget is, I guess. But, like MoFi, I carry MoFi turntables. I bought out they have the series of like the Ultra Decks.
Right.
It was a really, really fine turntable, which I have behind me next to like a Fikert, which is exponentially more expensive. And man, they're both excellent. There isn't one that I could say. I mean, obviously the Fikert's a cut above, but if the MoFi was the only thing that I'd ever been exposed to, I'd be thrilled out of my mind.
Yeah.
It's shocking how good it is. And I bought out they had some factory refurbs. So I bought out the factory refurbs. And I think I've got 4 or 5 of the Ultra Decks that I'm selling for, like $600 off, and even more. And they're brand new, with full warranty, all that kind of stuff. Isotech, of course, power conditioning. That's been really, really interesting. I've got tons of that stuff around here. I bought a pile of it to use for a Black Friday promotion. So that's great.
Which is next week.
Next week.
Black Friday is a week from tomorrow. Holy moly!
But that stuff has been amazing. That's another product that, and that's been a great product for me, because I sell to both pro, obviously, and home audio. And people come in, and everybody has been wondering about it, but nobody has had exposure to it. So I carry, I've got a Sigma and a Titan and a couple of other things in here at different levels, where I do the same thing as I do with the power cords. Hold on a second, boop, and stop it, and it's night and day.
Yeah.
So it's been thrilling for me to be in this aspect of it, and to be close to music again, because I was so tied up in the minutia of making music for such a long time. It's switch hats and be on the other side again, listening to music with people, and helping them explore and get closer to it. It's been absolutely thrilling. I'm a very lucky man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Folks can find you at schroederamplification.com. Is that correct?
That is correct. Schroeder Hi-Fi, I believe, also works.
Both work. And we've tagged you in the promos for this. So if you click on those tags, everybody, you can go follow Tim's page and like it, and turn your notifications on, and sign up on his mailing list, because he probably does have Black Friday specials. I'm assuming, I'm hoping that you will, right? Coming out. Yeah, you've announced it, so you're going to have to do it now. You're going to get off the interview. Like, oh man, I got to make a list. Right. More work. But thank you so much, Tim, for joining us. And so glad that you could tell your story. And thank you, everybody, for your great questions as well. This has been a really good interactive bunch of folks, and we love, this is the reason why we do this, and this is the reason why we have guys like Tim on to talk about it and to educate and to encourage everybody to go out and especially now, I think, because it looks like we're going to be staying home for a little longer.
Yeah.
Perfect time to be working on our systems, right? If we're going to have to listen to more music and find more great journeys to go on, then we might as well do it through. There it is. There it is.
I plugged myself once, you know.
The whole interview is about, also Tim is our guest curator this week on the show's social media feeds. So everything that you see is coming out of his showroom in Highland Park, Illinois. So if you want to see more or inquire more about that, you can send us a DM, or you can, we've tagged him, so you can click it and then it'll take you straight to his page and you can bombard him with questions, as they say. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tim. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned, everybody. We are obviously off next week because next Thursday is Thanksgiving Day. We may be closing out the season. Tim, you might be our season end guest, and then we will probably be back. We will be back in January. We are very pleased to say that the show 2021 is happening as of now. Asterisk fine print at the bottom. Please inquire by private messaging if you want to know more, because I know you do. Yeah, everybody have a happy, wonderful Thanksgiving, and please be safe. Don't do anything stupid like jumping out of a plane with a glass bottle in your hand. And if you're gonna do that, please wear a mask. Just saying. That's all I gotta say. We'll see you all very soon. And everybody go bombard Tim for his Black Friday specials.
Please do. Lay it on me.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you probably in about a month.
Thank you very much.